I heard the door slam above me, then the deadbolt clicked. That sound, so small, sent my heart straight to my throat. "This house is ours now," Jasmine said through the door, her voice calm like she was reading a grocery list. I screamed Darius's name, pounded on the door with my fists, begged him to open it. Nothing. Just silence. And in that silence, my husband leaned close in the dark and whispered, "They have no idea what I did. Just stay quiet." That was the moment I realized. They thought they were in control, but they didn't know what we were prepared for. Friends, before we dive into this story, I want to ask for a small favor. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It helps a lot. And I'd love to know where you're listening from, so drop your city or country in the comments. Let's get into it. I was rinsing the last plate, the warm water numbing my fingertips, when Darius burst into the kitchen like he'd seen a ghost. "Mom, I smell gas," he said, voice pitched just high enough to twist my gut. I turned off the faucet and looked over at Leon, who was sitting in his recliner with his eyes half closed, probably halfway to a nap. He opened one eye and looked at me, then at Darius. That boy wasn't the panicky type, not since he was a kid afraid of thunder. But he looked shaken. I grabbed the towel off the counter and wiped my hands, my mind already spinning with images of the stove leaking, the house exploding, Jasmine screaming. "Go down to the storm cellar," Darius said, "just until I check everything, just to be safe." Jasmine stepped in behind him, rubbing her belly like she was trying to protect her unborn baby. "Please, Mama," she whispered, eyes darting. I didn't even think. My heart started pounding, and I motioned to Leon to get up. "Come on," I said. "Let's go." I didn't want to scare them more than they already looked, and God knows I didn't want to be wrong if something really was leaking. So we went. The stairs creaked under our feet as we made our way down, Leon leading, me right behind him. My fingers gripped the rail so hard my knuckles cracked. I hated going down there. That basement always felt like a tomb, cold, dusty, the smell of concrete thick in the air. But my worry for Darius, for that baby Jasmine was carrying, overpowered everything else. When we reached the floor, I turned to call up, "You sure it's gas? Did you call the fire?" And then I heard it. The door slammed. Hard. I spun around, just as the sharp click of the deadbolt snapped through the air like a slap. My heart stopped. I stared at the door, confused for half a second, until I heard her voice, Jasmine's voice, on the other side. Calm. Cold. "This house is ours now," she said. "You've had your turn." I froze. My ears started ringing, my breath caught in my throat, and I couldn't even form words. Then everything rushed in at once. My legs moved before I knew it, and I started pounding on the door. "Darius! Baby, open this damn door!" My voice cracked as I shouted, "Darius, don't do this!" "What the hell are you doing?" I pounded harder, palms slapping the wood, then fists, then both. My throat burned with every scream. Leon stood there for a moment like he couldn't believe it either, like maybe he thought we were misunderstanding. But then the silence after her voice settled in, and reality started crawling into my skin. They weren't coming back. My own son had just locked us in the storm cellar. I turned to Leon, eyes wide, my chest heaving, and I said the only thing I could say, "Why? Why would he—" My brain couldn't catch up. This couldn't be real. My baby boy, the one I carried through sleepless nights and nosebleeds and broken hearts, just turned the lock on us like we were strangers. I stepped back and hit the wall, sliding down it as my knees gave out. The cold from the concrete seeped through my jeans. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." But yes, that click had been real. Her voice had been real. The betrayal settled into my bones like frost. Leon came over and crouched in front of me. He didn't say anything at first. His face was pale, drawn tight. I wanted him to fix it. I needed him to tell me it was just a prank, a mistake, that Darius would open the door laughing and tell us we were being too serious. But Leon didn't say anything like that. He looked up at the door, then back at me, and what he said chilled me even more. "They don't know what I did," he said, his voice low, like we were being watched. "Monty, don't scream. I've been hiding something." I blinked at him, not understanding. "What are you talking about?" I snapped. "What do you mean, hiding?" He looked calm. Too calm, like he'd been expecting this moment. My insides twisted. Everything was moving too fast. First the gas, then the lock. Now my husband telling me there were secrets I didn't know about. I felt like I was falling inside my own life. I stood back up and banged on the door again, harder this time, yelling until my throat went raw. No answer. Not even footsteps above. Just silence. I turned around and started pacing the basement, every step echoing in that cold, dead air. Leon walked to the far wall and started running his hands along the shelves. "What are you doing?" I asked. He didn't answer. He pulled something out. A toolbox? A crate? I couldn't tell. My whole body felt like static. "I knew something was coming," he said quietly. I didn't know it'd be like this, but I had a feeling. I stared at him like I didn't know who he was. "A feeling? And you didn't tell me?" He kept opening drawers, mumbling about cameras and trusts and files. My mind was spinning. I couldn't keep up. I wanted to scream at him, shake him, demand he explain himself, but part of me was terrified to hear the answers. What kind of husband plans for betrayal without warning his wife? I sat down again, back pressed against the wall, breathing in shallow, shaky gulps. I looked around that basement, same one where we kept Christmas boxes and old paint cans, and now it felt like a prison. And the jailer was my son who I'd sacrificed for, worked double shifts for, stayed up nights crying over. He didn't just close a door, he shut me out of his heart. And Jasmine, sweet Jasmine, always quiet, always smiling, she was in on it. That made it worse. She rubbed her belly like she was scared, like she was protecting her child, and the whole time she was helping lock us away. My hands trembled in my lap. A switch had flipped inside me. I wasn't just scared now. I was shattered. And underneath all that pain, something colder was forming. A sharp, growing edge. Because whatever happened next, whatever secrets Leon had, whatever mess Darius made, I knew one thing for sure. I'd never see my son the same way again. My back was pressed against the cold concrete wall, and my legs were pulled in tight to my chest, my palms stinging and scraped from beating on that door like I could force it open with pure desperation. The only light down there was a thin, pale line slipping under the door, just enough to remind me that freedom was inches away and completely unreachable. My breath kept hitching in my throat, fast and shallow, like my body didn't know how to breathe normally anymore. I kept staring at the door, waiting for it to swing open, waiting for Darius to laugh and say it went too far. It didn't. The silence felt thick and heavy. Then Leon moved closer and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. His voice was low, right near my ear. "Moni, you need to calm down." That's when I lost it. I shoved his arm off me and snapped, loud and sharp, "Calm down! Our son just locked us in a damn basement and you want me to calm down?" My whole chest burned with anger and fear mixed together. I felt like my skin was buzzing and my heart was trying to break free from my ribs. Nothing about this made sense, and I wasn't ready to be calm about any of it. Leon didn't raise his voice back at me. That made it worse somehow. He stayed too steady, too grounded, like this wasn't completely shattering his world. He leaned closer again, careful this time, and said something that made my stomach twist. "I've been preparing for this." I stared at him, not even sure I'd heard him right. "Preparing for what?" I asked, my voice shaking. "For my own son to betray me? For my family to fall apart in a basement?" He exhaled slowly and said he always felt something coming. That Darius had been different for a long time, and he didn't trust that quiet anger in his eyes. I wanted to scream at him. Instead, my words came out low and sharp. "So you saw this coming and you didn't tell me?" My hands were trembling in my lap. He shook his head slightly and said he didn't want to scare me, didn't want me walking around waiting for the worst. That answer didn't comfort me at all. It made me feel small and left out of my own life. The cold floor beneath me felt even colder as I tried to understand how my husband could be preparing for disaster while I was still believing in our son. Then Leon stood up and walked along the wall, running his hand over the old shelves and boxes like he'd done it before. I watched him, confused and unsettled as he reached behind a stack of paint cans and pulled out a small black box I had never seen in all our years in that house. My eyes locked onto it immediately. "What is that?" I asked. He knelt in front of me and opened it just enough to show me a tiny screen and wires. "Camera," he said. "There's one in the hallway upstairs. It records everything." My chest tightened. "You put a camera in our house without telling me?" My head felt like it was spinning now. He nodded and kept talking like this was a normal thing people did. He said whatever Darius and Jasmine were doing up there was being recorded right now. Every word, every move. Then he said something that hit even harder. "The house isn't even in our names the way he thinks it is." I blinked at him, my mind struggling to keep up. "What do you mean it isn't in our names?" My voice came out weak. He explained that the house had been put into a trust, a legal trust, that it wasn't something Darius could just take. I felt like the ground shifted beneath me again, only this time it wasn't my son pulling it out from under me. It was my husband. Leon kept talking, his words steady, almost rehearsed. He told me about paperwork I had never seen, documents locked away, meetings with a lawyer I never knew about. Then he said he had moved money too. Savings. Money Darius thought would be his one day. He moved it the same week Darius screamed in my face about how I owed him for his childhood. That part burned. "You moved our money without telling me?" I asked. My voice cracked in a way I hated. I felt fear twist into something hot and fierce in my chest. Anger, not just at Darius anymore. At Leon, too. He said he did it to protect us, to make sure we were safe if things ever turned ugly. I laughed once, dry and bitter. "They already did," I said. My heart was pounding again, but this time it wasn't just panic. It was betrayal stacking on top of betrayal. I wasn't just the mother trapped by her child now. I was the wife standing in the shadow of a man who had been making huge moves behind my back, all in my name. I felt stupid, exposed, like everyone else had a script and I was the only one improvising. I pushed myself to my feet, my legs unsteady, needing space to breathe even though the basement had none to give. I started pacing the narrow floor, my footsteps echoing off the concrete. Every step felt like I was trying to walk off the weight building in my chest. "So you planned for this," I said. "You planned for your own son to turn on us, and you didn't think I deserved to know?" Leon followed me with his eyes, but stayed where he was. He said he thought if he told me, I'd never sleep, never trust Darius again, that it would poison whatever love was left between us. That made tears rush up without warning. "It's poisoned now," I said quietly. "It's poisoned because it happened without me." I felt humiliated in a new way. Not just as a mother who raised a son capable of this, but as a wife kept in the dark about the most important parts of my own security. I leaned my forehead against the cold wall and squeezed my eyes shut. The house I thought was my safe place was now a stage for secrets I never agreed to be part of. The thin strip of light under the door didn't change. No footsteps, no voices, just the quiet hum of whatever life was going on upstairs without us. I slid back down the wall and sat again, my body suddenly heavy with everything I'd just learned. Leon sat beside me this time without touching me. We just existed next to each other in that cold space, both keeping our distance in a way we never had before. I felt trapped in more than one way now. Trapped by the locked door, trapped by my son's betrayal, trapped by the realization that my husband had built a whole safety net without letting me hold a single thread of it. My hands kept shaking in my lap, even when I tried to stop them. My teeth chattered, and I couldn't tell if it was from the cold or from the shock of it all. I whispered, almost to myself, "I don't even know who I'm supposed to be angry at first." Leon didn't answer, and in that silence, I understood something that scared me more than the basement ever could. I didn't know who in my own family I could truly trust anymore. I kicked the storm door again, the edge of my heel catching against the metal with a loud clang, but it didn't budge. I counted softly under my breath, 1, 2, 3, 4, just to stop myself from crying again. My throat was already raw from yelling, and my chest hurt from all the shallow breathing. The air down there was thick with dust and that old basement smell, like mildew and concrete and forgotten paint cans. Leon was on his knees in the corner, digging through an old toolbox he found under a shelf. I heard him muttering to himself. Then he came back with a rusted screwdriver. He shoved it into the lock and twisted, the metal screeching like it was screaming back. I sat down on the steps, checked my phone again, still no bars, and wanted to throw it across the room. "It's like we've been buried alive," I said. Leon didn't answer. His focus was all on the lock, hand steady, jaw tight. Every few minutes, one of us would call out again, just in case someone walked by on the street. I kept hoping to hear footsteps or even Jasmine's voice saying it was a mistake. But there was nothing, just that silence, thick and cruel. As the minutes stretched into hours, my mind drifted, unwilling but persistent, back to the last real fight we had with Darius. We were in the living room, that old lamp flickering beside the couch, and he was standing over us, shaking with rage. "You owe me this house," he shouted. "You ruined my life working all those damn night shifts." His voice echoed in my head now, like it never left. I remember the way he looked at me, like I was the enemy, like I was some stranger who'd stolen something from him. He didn't see the years I spent folding towels at the hospital, rushing from patient to patient, while my feet swelled in shoes too tight because we couldn't afford better. He didn't see the nights I came home too tired to eat, just collapsed on the couch while he slept upstairs. All he saw was that I wasn't there enough. "You chose your job over me," he said that day. And now it was like he was proving it, showing me what choosing meant to him. The guilt crept in, heavy and unwanted, wrapping around my throat even as I stayed furious. I had worked myself raw for him, and he saw it as abandonment. Somewhere in that long stretch of night, my sobs dried up. My chest still ached, but I stopped crying. It wasn't helping, and it was making me feel weaker. Instead, I started watching Leon closely, noticing how methodical he was. He pulled out the little black box again and started checking the camera feed. "I set the camera on a timer," he said. "Every 2 hours, it sends a backup to the cloud. Even if they cut the power, we've got copies." I stared at him. "You really thought this through, didn't you?" He nodded but didn't look proud. "I didn't know it would be this," he said. "But I knew something might happen. He's been different. Cold." I hated hearing it, but I couldn't deny it. I remembered birthdays where Darius barely said thank you, holidays where he barely looked up from his phone. But I told myself that was just how kids are these days. I excused it. I excused a lot. And now, my husband was down here, not surprised, not panicked, prepared. The camera, the trust, the accounts. I saw now, this wasn't paranoia. It was defense. A quiet, slow kind of defense that made me feel both protected and betrayed at the same time. Leon handed me his phone to show me the live feed. The hallway camera caught the edge of the front door, the staircase, part of the living room. Jasmine walked through the frame holding a bowl of popcorn, like nothing had happened. Darius followed behind her, laughing at something on his phone. It made my skin crawl, the ease of it, the normalcy. Like we hadn't just been erased, like they weren't upstairs, in our house, watching TV while we sat in the cold basement. "They're not even hiding it," I said. My voice cracked. "They think we're done." Leon didn't answer. He just clicked a few things and made sure the footage was saving. That's when I realized this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a takeover. It wasn't about a fight or a mistake or a bad moment. It was a decision. They had decided we were in the way, that our lives, our presence, didn't matter anymore, and they were ready to move on without us. I gripped the phone tightly and leaned back against the wall, trying to keep my breath steady. This was bigger than anger now. This was war, whether I wanted it or not. It must have been after midnight when I heard the faintest noise, metal hitting metal. I shot up and pressed my ear to the door. Leon froze, screwdriver still in his hand. We both listened. There it was again. A clang. Then a voice, muffled but real. "Hello? Anyone in there?" It was Mr. Raymond, our neighbor 2 doors down. I started banging on the door with both fists, yelling his name over and over. "Raymond, we're down here, help!" Leon joined in, And soon the banging above turned to prying, and we heard the crowbar scrape against the lock. Relief flooded in so hard I almost collapsed. My knees gave out, and I had to grab the railing to keep from falling. I wanted to cry again, but I didn't. I stayed quiet, listening to the sound of rescue. And as that door finally creaked open and the hallway light spilled in, I didn't feel safe. I felt exposed, embarrassed, like we'd been caught in something dirty, something shameful. Darius and Jasmine were nowhere to be seen. They disappeared, cowards. My whole body trembled as I climbed out, one step at a time, unsure what world we were stepping back into. I stood in my own hallway, looking around like a stranger. The air felt warmer, but nothing felt right. Mr. Raymond was asking questions. What happened? Who did this? Did we need to call the police? Leon said yes, calm and firm. I just nodded. I didn't speak much. My voice felt trapped. In my head, I kept repeating the same thing. This isn't just a fight. This isn't just family drama. It's something else now, a breaking, a shift, something we can't come back from. I glanced down the hallway toward the kitchen where Darius once ran in after school to tell me about a science project where Jasmine used to giggle pouring sweet tea. That kitchen now felt like someone else's. My body ached. My heart felt swollen and bruised. But somewhere deep inside, under all the pain and shock and shame, I felt something else flicker, clarity. This was the moment everything changed. And once it changed, it wasn't going back. The blanket felt too thin, even though I was wrapped up tight on our living room couch, knees pulled close to my chest. Dirt clung to my jeans, smudging the fabric, and my hands wouldn't stop trembling. The television was glowing in the corner, but it wasn't showing a movie or the news. It was playing the footage Leon had pulled from that hidden hallway camera. 2 officers stood in front of it, arms crossed, eyes locked on the screen like it was evidence in some crime show. But this wasn't TV. It was my life. I watched myself on that screen, watched my son shoving me toward the basement stairs. I flinched, even though I knew it was coming. Then Jasmine's voice came through the speakers. "Just do it, babe. They'll thank us later." I felt my face burn hot. Shame climbed up my neck and settled behind my eyes. Watching it play out like that, in front of strangers, made me feel naked. I looked down at my hands, clutched in my lap, and all I could think was, how did we get here? How did I raise someone who could do that to me and still call me Mom? One of the officers turned to me. His voice was gentle, almost too calm, like he was talking to someone who'd just been in a car crash. "Do you want to press charges, ma'am?" The words hit me like a slap. My mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. How do you answer a question like that about your own child? I looked at the screen again. There he was, my Darius, pushing me like I was in his way, like I wasn't his mother. I blinked hard. "That's not him," I whispered. But it was. That's the truth I didn't want to say out loud. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened as I remembered the moment I first held him at Grady Hospital. Tiny fingers, pink face, that little cry. I had memorized every inch of him back then. That baby was gone now, replaced by this grown man with cold eyes and cruel hands. Leon started talking behind me, explaining things about property law, forced entry, trespassing. He sounded sure, logical. But I wasn't hearing much. My mind was splitting down the middle, half of it wanting to protect my son, and the other half screaming that he needed to pay for what he did. I thought of the bruises blooming on my arm, the soreness in my shoulders from struggling, from panic. And then, like my brain was flipping through a photo album I never asked for, I saw flashes of him riding a bike in the driveway, wobbly and grinning. Of me clapping, shouting, "You got it, baby." I saw the Halloween costumes I stayed up sewing, the report cards I signed. I saw everything I gave, every piece of myself I handed over without keeping much for me. And now this. Now I had to decide whether to press charges like he was just some man off the street. I looked up at the officer and opened my mouth again. My voice cracked, and I cleared my throat. "Can I think about it?" He nodded. "Of course, but we do need a statement tonight." My fingers curled around the blanket tighter. I didn't know what to write, didn't know how to explain a betrayal that still felt unreal. I was still inside the wound, and they were already asking me how I wanted to treat it. Leon came over and sat beside me. He didn't touch me, just sat close enough that I could feel the heat of his body. "You don't have to protect him," he said, not looking at me. "Not this time." I didn't answer. I didn't know if I could. I felt like if I said one wrong word, the whole world would come crashing down. We both watched as the footage played again, looping back to the part where Darius locked the door. I hated how calm Jasmine looked. I hated that she said they'd be doing us a favor, like this was a kindness. I could feel the officers shifting behind us, waiting. I could feel the pressure building. I was tired, not just body tired, soul tired. And the worst part was knowing that no matter what I chose, nothing would feel right. If I protected him, I'd be betraying myself. If I didn't, I'd be the mother who put her own son in a courtroom. There was no winning here, no clean ending. The officer handed me a clipboard with a statement form. My hand hovered over it, pen shaking. I took a deep breath, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. I wrote slowly, each word feeling like it cost me something. I described the moment we were led down to the cellar, the click of the lock, the hours trapped in silence. I described the fear, the disbelief. I didn't embellish, didn't dramatize. I just told the truth, because at this point, truth was all I had left. When I got to the part where he pushed me, I had to stop writing and wipe my eyes with the sleeve of my shirt. I kept thinking, maybe if I write it down, I'll understand it better. But all it did was make it more real. When I finally signed my name at the bottom, I felt like something in me had shifted. A door had closed, and whatever version of family we used to have, mother, father, son, that version didn't exist anymore. By the time the officers left, the house felt colder, emptier. Leon turned off the TV and sat back down beside me. I leaned my head against the cushion, my body heavy with something I couldn't name. We didn't speak much. There wasn't anything left to say. I looked around the room at the family photos on the wall, wondering how long it would be before I could look at them without feeling like a fool. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Lawyers, maybe. Or calls from Darius, begging or blaming. I didn't know what kind of person this would make me, what kind of mother I'd be after choosing this path. But I knew this. We couldn't lie our way out of this one. We couldn't pretend it was just a misunderstanding. What Darius did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And by signing that paper, I had made mine too. Our family wasn't just shaken, it was broken. And the law was about to see it for what it was. The chair dug into my back, hard plastic with no give, like it was designed to make you feel guilty no matter what you'd done. The air smelled like old coffee and floor cleaner, and the buzz of the overhead lights never stopped. I sat with my arms folded tight, trying to hold myself together while the officer across from me flipped through pages of my earlier statement. "Can you go over it one more time, just for the record?" he asked, like I hadn't already said the words out loud twice before. I nodded, slow and tired, and started again, my voice flat. "He said he smelled gas, told us to go to the storm cellar, said it was just until he checked things." My voice stayed low, steady. Then the door shut, locked. We were down there for hours. The officer nodded, scribbling something. But behind my calm tone, everything inside me was screaming. Through the wall, I could hear Darius shouting in the next room. "It was a prank! I didn't mean it to go like that." His voice was full of frustration and panic, like he was the one being wronged. Every word from him felt like a fresh slap. A part of me wanted to run in there and hold him. Another part wanted to never hear his voice again. I kept my eyes on the floor while I talked. I couldn't look at the officer anymore. Every time I tried to speak, something inside me twisted. This wasn't how mothers were supposed to talk about their children. I told the truth, but I hated the sound of it coming from my own mouth. I said the words locked us in like they were just facts, but they weren't. They were wounds. The officer asked follow-up questions gently, like he could see I was fraying. "Did he threaten you at any point?" No, he didn't have to. The act was threat enough. I described the way Jasmine stood beside him, rubbing her belly, calm as anything, like it was all justified, like they weren't doing something cruel. Part of me wanted to say it was all a mistake, that maybe they got scared and didn't know how to fix it. But I couldn't lie. Not here. Not after what it did to me. Not with Leon's voice still echoing in my ear saying, "They planned this." I shifted in the chair, my body aching from the stress of it all, and tried to keep my voice steady while my heart broke in slow motion. Then the detective walked in. Older man, plain tie, kind eyes that made me want to cry for no reason. He sat across from me and slid a new form across the table. "This would make the case a felony," he said. "It's your choice whether you want to pursue it that way." My hands froze. I looked at the paper, then at the pen sitting next to it. My fingers wouldn't move. The weight of that decision hit me so hard I couldn't breathe for a second. Felony. That word was too big, too final. I pictured Darius in handcuffs, standing in court, his name in some system forever. I could hear my own voice in the ER again, comforting mothers who came in crying over their sons, shot, stabbed, overdosed, begging us to save them. "He's a good boy. He just got in with the wrong people," they'd say. And now, somehow, I was one of them. Not with drugs or gangs, but betrayal. My son's betrayal. I couldn't make sense of it. I hated that it was even mine to decide. And yet, there I was, staring at the choice. Protect him or protect myself. Be his mother or be the woman he locked in a basement. I picked up the pen with a hand that didn't feel like mine. My grip was loose, clumsy. I didn't rush. I read every line slowly, even though the words blurred a little. My mind kept swinging back and forth. He's still your child. He needs help. He's dangerous. He chose this. He didn't think it through. He didn't care how it hurt you. All of it crashed together in my chest. I wished someone could tell me what the right thing was. I wished my own mother was still alive to hold my hand and say, "This is what you do now." But she wasn't. It was just me, at this metal table, with the pen in my hand and my son's future hanging in the balance. I signed, slowly, clearly. My name at the bottom felt like a hammer falling. The room didn't change, but I did. I was no longer just a mother trying to fix things. I had crossed into something else, someone who chose to be safe over silent. I looked up at the detective, and he nodded once, serious and quiet. I wanted to vomit. I walked out of that room with my stomach twisted into knots. The hallway looked the same, but everything inside me was different. Leon was waiting near the door, his eyes searching mine. "Did you do it?" he asked. I just nodded. I couldn't even say the words. He didn't smile or frown. He just reached out and gently touched my arm. We walked out of the station without saying much. The sun had started setting, casting a long orange glow across the parking lot. I felt like I was underwater, like every step took too much effort. I thought about what Darius must be feeling. Was he scared? Angry? Blaming me? Probably all of it. And I knew, deep down, that after this, he would never look at me the same. He'd see me as the woman who turned him in, but he already stopped seeing me as a mother long before this. That part was the real ache. That I'd lost him before I even knew it. When we got in the car, I sat for a long time before starting the engine. I stared at my hands on the wheel, still trembling a little. "He'll never forgive me," I whispered. Leon didn't answer. I didn't expect him to. The silence between us was full of too many truths. I pulled out of the lot and drove slowly, careful on every turn. I felt like one wrong move might break me in two. I knew that signing that form meant I chose to protect myself. I chose not to shrink anymore. But it also meant letting go of the hope that I could fix this with love alone. That maybe, if I just tried harder, Darius would come back to me. I knew now that wasn't going to happen. The boy I raised, the one who needed me, was gone. And whatever happened next, I'd have to face it, not just as his mother, but as a woman trying to survive the worst kind of betrayal. By the time I turned onto our street, the house in the distance didn't look like home anymore. And I didn't feel like the same woman who used to live in it. The office was colder than it needed to be, Or maybe it just felt that way because of the conversation. I sat stiff in a vinyl chair across from a lawyer I'd never met before, the nameplate on his desk reading Jeffrey Mills-esque, like he was starring in some courtroom drama. A stack of papers with my name on them sat between us, thick and slightly curled at the edges. Leon spoke like he was going over an estimate for a brake job. Calm, efficient, like this was all just another problem to be handled and filed away. "We created the trust last year," he said, like we did it together. My eyebrows shot up, but I didn't say anything yet. I kept my arms crossed tight and listened while the lawyer flipped through pages and pointed out legal terms I didn't recognize. "According to the trust language," he said, tapping one line with his pen, "Darius has no legal ownership or inheritance rights to the house or associated assets." He said it like it was good news, and maybe it was. But all I felt was a punch of heat in my chest. Because this was the first I was hearing about any of it. Leon didn't look at me. He stayed focused on the lawyer, nodding like he'd done his homework. Meanwhile, I felt like a stranger in the room. I stared at the word irrevocable on the paperwork, trying to absorb what that meant, trying to understand how decisions this big were made without me. Mr. Mills kept going. Asset protection, estate preservation, liability shielding. All these words meant to make me feel safer, I guess. But all I could think was, how long has this been going on? How many meetings did Leon have without me? I didn't even know where our will was, and apparently there was a whole trust in place with legal protections I'd never signed. I finally cut in, my voice sharper than I meant. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked Leon directly. He blinked like he wasn't expecting it. "I didn't want to worry you," he said, shrugging, like that should calm me down. "You were already working too hard. I figured I'd handle it." That made it worse. That tight feeling in my chest grew like someone turning a screw. I wasn't a child. I wasn't some helpless woman he had to protect with silence. I turned toward the lawyer and asked, "So what does this mean now? Can Darius come after us legally?" Mr. Mills shook his head. "Not unless he can prove fraud or coercion, which, based on the security footage and the documentation we have, he won't." His voice was smooth and confident. "But I would recommend taking further steps, filing a restraining order, changing locks, maybe installing outdoor surveillance." I nodded barely. My mind wasn't keeping up. I felt like I was living in two realities, one where I was a mother still trying to process what my son had done, and another where I was suddenly a defendant in a life I thought I had control over. Every suggestion the lawyer made felt like I was moving further from motherhood and closer to something colder, like a corporate version of myself I didn't ask to become. Leon agreed with everything. "We'll do whatever it takes," he said. "We're not going to get caught off guard again." His tone was final, businesslike. I stared at the edge of the desk, my eyes blurring for a second. I wasn't sure what hurt more, Darius turning on me or Leon deciding quietly that I couldn't handle the truth. As the meeting dragged on, I barely spoke. I nodded in the right places. I signed a few documents. I listened. But inside, something was breaking apart. I didn't know how to name it yet. I kept thinking about the word protection. That's what Leon kept saying he was doing. Protecting me. Protecting the house. Protecting the family. But how protected can a person feel when they don't even know what they're being shielded from? My home, our home, wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. It was every dinner we ever had together, every birthday cake, every late-night talk. And now it was reduced to paperwork and clauses and legal strategy. I didn't like how familiar Leon looked sitting across from the lawyer, how confident he was in this world of documents and deals. It made me wonder how much more I didn't know. What else had he kept from me in the name of not worrying me? The silence between us in that small office said everything. This wasn't about Darius anymore. Not entirely. This was about the cracks in my marriage that had been covered up with politeness and busy schedules and trust I thought was mutual. When the meeting ended, I stood up slowly, smoothing the front of my blouse like I could pull myself together with one gesture. Mr. Mills shook my hand and handed me a folder. "This has all the documentation we reviewed today, plus a copy of your current trust and estate plan." The papers felt heavy in my arms. I thanked him out of habit, not because I felt grateful. Leon walked beside me as we left the building, but I didn't reach for his hand. We didn't speak until we got to the car. He opened the door for me like he always did, like we were still the same people we used to be, and I got in without a word. Once we were driving, I finally said, "Don't ever keep something like this from me again." He nodded, but I didn't feel reassured. I wasn't asking for a favor. I was drawing a line I should have drawn a long time ago, because whether it was Darius or Leon, I was tired of being managed, tired of being someone people took care of by keeping her in the dark. We got home just before dark. I carried the folder straight to the kitchen table and opened it, flipping through the pages like I was studying for an exam. Leon sat across from me quietly, his hands folded. I didn't look at him much. I kept my eyes on the documents, trying to memorize the structure of my own life, piece by piece. I found the clause that said the house couldn't be sold without both trustees' consent. My name was on it, finally. That gave me a small sense of control, but it didn't erase the feeling that I'd been a guest in my own future. I sat there for a long time after Leon went upstairs, just reading. And as I turned each page, I made a quiet promise to myself. This would be the last time someone made a decision for me. Whether it was about my house, my money, or my safety, I'd never again be the one left in the dark. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't need to. I just kept reading, the papers crackling under my fingers like something waking up. The folding chair squeaked as I shifted, trying to get comfortable while pretending I didn't notice all the glances being thrown my way. Denise's backyard was full. Kids chasing each other around the tree swing, uncles hollering over a domino game near the fence, the grill hissing in the corner. But the moment I sat down with my paper plate of ribs and coleslaw, it felt like every conversation in the yard slowed. Not enough to be obvious, but enough for me to feel it. The weight of what happened wasn't just in my chest. It was on their faces, watching me, wondering, judging. I kept my head down, focused on the ribs even though I wasn't hungry. The tangy smell of barbecue clung to the air, but all I could taste was anxiety. I stabbed at the potato salad with my plastic fork and waited. It didn't take long. One of my older cousins, Cheryl, leaned across the table and said, "All fake sweetness. We haven't seen Darius around. He doing okay?" I paused, swallowed hard, and said evenly, "He's dealing with some legal consequences right now." I kept my voice steady, careful, and just like that, the whole table went quiet. The silence only lasted a second, but it rang loud in my ears. Then Aunt Loretta clicked her tongue and shook her head like she had expected this all along. "That's what happens," she said, drawing out each word, "when mothers work too much and let the streets raise their kids." I stared at her for a moment, stunned. Her tone was casual, like she was commenting on the weather, but every word landed like a slap. My jaw tightened. I didn't speak right away because I knew if I did, I'd come out swinging. I looked around the table and saw people glancing down at their plates, pretending to be distracted by the kids or the grill. Nobody stood up for me. Not one person said, "That's not fair." And in that moment, I didn't feel like a grown woman anymore. I felt 12 years old again, sitting on the edge of a couch while my mama and my aunties whispered in the kitchen, choosing my daddy over me. Back then, I learned real quick how to keep quiet and swallow things whole. But this time, something inside me pushed back. I leaned over and whispered to Denise, who was sitting right next to me, close enough to feel the warmth of her arm. "Did I ever tell you I used to sleep in the bathtub some nights?" She turned to me slowly, her mouth parting a little in surprise. I kept my voice low, steady. When my daddy got mad, I'd wait until he passed out and then drag a blanket into the bathroom. I thought maybe the sound of the water pipes would drown out the yelling. Denise blinked. "Monique, I never knew." I shrugged, even though I could feel my hands starting to tremble. "Nobody did. Mama always said if I stayed quiet, it would go away." Denise reached for my hand, but I wasn't finished. "So yeah, maybe I worked too much. Maybe I wasn't there every minute for Darius. But I did everything I could to make sure he didn't grow up scared in his own home. I gave him more than I had. And maybe I gave too much. Maybe I tried to buy his love with gifts and vacations and anything I thought would keep him close." She squeezed my hand and said softly, "You don't owe anyone here an explanation." But I wasn't saying it for them. I was saying it for me, because something had cracked open, right there between the barbecue and the gossip. I realized I wasn't just ashamed of what Darius had done. I was carrying years of shame that had nothing to do with him. I had tried so hard to outrun the ghosts of my childhood. I didn't notice I'd handed some of them straight to my son, dressed up in money and freedom instead of fists and silence. It wasn't about blame. It was about truth. And the truth was, I'd been running on guilt for so long, I didn't even recognize it anymore. I sat back in my chair, the weight in my chest just a little lighter, like saying it out loud loosened something that had been stuck inside me for decades. Denise didn't press me. She didn't ask questions. She just let me sit with it. And that was more kindness than I'd felt all day. When I finally stood up to leave, I didn't say goodbye to everyone. I just hugged Denise and thanked her for the food. Loretta gave me a look like she wanted the last word, but I didn't give it to her. I walked through the gate with my shoulders straight, the heat of the late afternoon sun warming my back. I felt raw, like I'd been peeled open, but I also felt more honest than I had in years. My shame wasn't just about my son anymore. It was about my past, my mother, the choices I made, and the ones I never got to make. And now that I could see all of that clearly, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep pretending. Not for my family, not for appearances, not even for the version of myself I'd been trying to protect. The wounds were real, but so was my strength. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving it. I was naming it, owning it, starting to heal from it, even if it hurt, even if nobody else understood. Leon was folding his shirts like nothing had happened, like we hadn't been locked in a basement by our own son, like the ground hadn't just shifted under our marriage. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom with my arms crossed, staring at the neat way he lined up the collars and pressed out the creases with the side of his hand. The calmness of it lit something in me. My jaw clenched, and I finally spoke, sharp and loud. "You trust a lawyer more than you trust me." He didn't stop folding, didn't look up, just said, "That's not fair, Monique. I was trying to protect us." I took a step inside, my voice rising. "Don't give me that. You were trying to control everything without telling me. That's not protection. That's secrecy." He sighed like he was tired of this, like I was being dramatic. That made it worse. My whole body tensed as I walked to the edge of the bed. "Do you even understand what it felt like, being locked in that cellar, by our son, and realizing you had backup plans you never shared with me?" He finally paused, one hand resting on a half-folded shirt. The room went quiet, but my heart kept pounding. His shoulders dropped. Something in his face changed, softened, like the weight of what I said finally landed. He sat down on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "You want to know why I did it?" he said quietly. "When I was 9, the bank took our house. I came home from school and found my mama stuffing everything we owned into trash bags. No warning, no plan, just gone. And I swore I'd never let that happen to my family. I didn't move. I just watched him, arms still crossed tight across my chest. He kept talking. I started putting money away, started the trust, did all of it because I needed to know that if things ever went bad, we'd still have a roof. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to carry that fear with me." My throat tightened. I didn't know that story. I'd never heard it before. And hearing it now made my anger flicker, just a little. But it didn't go away, because this wasn't just about fear. This was about trust. And the truth is, he didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. I sat down across from him, on the edge of the dresser bench, close enough to see the lines in his face. "Leon, I get that you were scared. I get that you were trying to take care of us. But when you make decisions like that without me, it makes me feel invisible. Like I'm just someone you need to shield, not someone you stand beside." He didn't interrupt. He just looked at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. Regret, maybe, or understanding. I kept going. "Do you have any idea how lonely it feels? To be married and still feel like you're the last to know everything? To find out in a basement, In the worst moment of my life, that my husband has been playing defense behind my back? My voice cracked, and I didn't try to hide it. I was tired of pretending to be the one holding it all together. He reached for my hand, and I let him hold it, but I didn't let go of the hurt. Not yet. I needed him to see it, all of it. "I'm not saying what you did was all wrong," I said after a long pause. "But the way you did it? That's not okay. I deserve to be in the room when decisions are made about my life, about our life. This house, our money, our safety. That's mine too." He nodded slowly. "You're right," he said. "I should have told you. I should have trusted you with all of it." I believed him. But belief wasn't enough anymore. I needed change, real change. I pulled my hand back gently and stood up. "If we're going to stay together, things are going to be different. We're going to counseling. I want full access to every account. I want passwords, updates, everything. And no more of this 'I'll handle it' crap. We handle it together. Or not at all." He didn't argue. Just nodded again, firmer this time. "Okay," he said. "You've got it." It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a perfect fix. But it was a start. I walked out of the room before either of us could say something to soften the moment too much. My legs were shaking, but I kept moving. Down the hall, past the photos on the wall, past the quiet kitchen. I didn't stop until I reached the back porch. I stood there in the doorway, the air hitting my face, cool and sharp. For the first time in a long time, I felt a little more grounded, a little more myself. I wasn't just reacting to what happened anymore. I was starting to act, to draw lines, to speak clearly about what I needed. It didn't erase the betrayal. It didn't fix what Darius had done or what Leon had hidden. But it gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. I was still hurting, still furious, still grieving, but I was no longer silent. And that, for now, was enough. The bench was cold and stiff under me, and no matter how many times I shifted, it didn't get any better. I sat there with my hands clenched tight in my lap, fingers digging into each other while I stared at the front of the courtroom. The air felt thin, dry, like the kind you can't breathe deep in. The walls were beige, the lighting too bright, and everything looked more serious than I was ready for. Then they brought him in, Darius. Wrinkled button-down, slouched shoulders, that look on his face like he didn't know where to put his eyes. He looked younger than I remembered. Smaller, like he was shrinking under the weight of it all. My stomach flipped as the judge started reading the charges. False imprisonment. The words echoed too loudly. Part of me wanted to stand up and yell, "That's not what he meant to do." But another part, the part that still felt the bruises from that night, knew it was exactly what he did. Not a mistake, a choice. And hearing it out loud like that made my throat close up. When the bailiff called my name, I froze for half a second before forcing myself to stand. My knees wobbled, and my heart thudded so hard I was scared people could hear it. I stepped up to the front, looked at the judge, then over at Darius. He didn't meet my eyes. His head stayed down. I opened my mouth, and at first nothing came out. Then I found my voice, shaky but steady enough. "That night in the basement," I began, "I thought I was going to die in the dark. Not from gas. From the realization that my own son locked me away like I was a problem." My voice cracked, but I kept going. I told them about the fear, the confusion, how I begged and cried and got no answer. I told them what it felt like to see your child's love twist into something unrecognizable. It wasn't just a prank, I said. It was a betrayal. The courtroom was silent. My legs felt like they could give out at any second, but I stood firm, not because I wasn't scared, but because I was done being quiet about what happened to me. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't try to protect him, not this time, but I also didn't try to destroy him. When the judge asked if I had a recommendation, I took a deep breath and said what I'd been rehearsing for days. "I want him to face what he did," I said. "I want accountability. But I also want him to get help, because something in him broke a long time before he did this to us." I could feel the tears pushing up behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I needed them to hear me clearly. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here to be heard. To say out loud what had gone unsaid in our house for years, about anger, about silence, about fear disguised as control. I looked at Darius again, hoping for some flicker of emotion, some signal that he understood, even a little. He just stared at the table in front of him, frozen. That hurt, more than I expected. But I let the hurt sit there. I didn't run from it. I stood with it. When I stepped down and walked back to my seat, Leon reached out and gently squeezed my hand. I didn't look at him. I just stared ahead, trying to focus on the judge's voice as he spoke again. The sentencing was clear and deliberate. Probation, mandatory counseling, and a no-contact order until further review. I nodded to myself, quietly. It wasn't everything. It didn't undo anything. But it was something. A record. A consequence. And more importantly, a boundary. I didn't know if Darius would follow through with the counseling. I didn't know if it would change anything between us. But at least now, someone besides me had said it mattered. That what happened wasn't okay. That I wasn't just being dramatic or overreacting. That line had been crossed, and the law saw it too. As the courtroom emptied, I stood up slowly, my body still buzzing from adrenaline. I glanced back once more at Darius. He was being led out by a deputy, still avoiding my gaze. I felt a twist in my stomach, something like mourning. Not for who he was in that moment, but for who he used to be, before the distance, before the resentment, before all the walls went up between us. But I didn't chase that feeling. I let it come and go like a wave, grief and relief at once. That's what it was. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel proud. I just felt steady. For the first time since the cellar, I felt like I'd taken my voice back from the people who tried to silence it. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't begged. I had spoken. And it had changed something. Outside the courthouse, the air was heavy but warm. The sun peeked through the clouds like it had been waiting on me. Leon stood beside me quietly as we walked toward the car. He didn't say anything, and he didn't need to. I felt the ache of the whole day in my bones, but also something new under it, a shift. Not just in the legal case or in Darius's path, but in me. A shift in how I saw myself. Not as someone holding a broken family together with duct tape and silence, but as someone who had the right to demand more. More respect, more truth, more peace. I opened the car door, slid into the seat, and exhaled so deeply it felt like I was clearing a room inside me that had been crowded for years. It wasn't over. None of this was over. But for the first time, I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't powerless anymore. The coffee machine hummed softly behind me, its slow drip the only sound in the house. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, arms folded, letting the quiet wrap around me. No yelling, no tension. Just the scent of fresh coffee filling the air and a soft breeze coming through the cracked window. The morning sun stretched across the floor in thin gold stripes, lighting up the counter where my notebook sat open. My eyes landed on the page I'd started the night before, a list in my own handwriting, things I wanted just for me, not for the family, not to keep peace, just me. I saw the words night classes, support group, and relearn piano all in neat rows. I wasn't rushing around trying to fix anything. I wasn't checking on anyone. I wasn't bracing for the next bad thing. That feeling, the one I'd carried for years like armor, was finally gone, at least for now. Through the window, I saw Leon out in the yard with the hose, moving slowly between the flower beds. He looked softer somehow, like something had lifted off him too. For once, I didn't feel responsible for the whole world, just present. I pulled out the chair and sat down at the kitchen table, the wood cool under my arms. In front of me sat the letter I'd been writing to Darius, the paper slightly wrinkled from where my hand had hovered too long. I picked up the pen again, my fingers shaky, and read the last few lines out loud in a whisper. I love you, but I won't rescue you anymore. You need to do the work, and if we're going to have any kind of relationship again, it has to be real, built on truth, built on respect. My voice caught on the word respect, and I sat still for a moment, staring at it. I didn't know what he'd do with this letter. Maybe he'd rip it up. Maybe he wouldn't read past the first sentence. But that wasn't up to me anymore. For the first time, I understood that clearly. I'd carried guilt for so long, I forgot what it felt like to let go of something that wasn't mine to fix. I signed my name at the bottom, slow, careful. Monique, not Mom, not Ma, just me. It felt strange. It felt honest. I folded the letter and slipped it into the envelope, sealing it with a breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding. The sound of it closing felt final in the best way, like a door shutting softly behind me. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just sat there for a while, palms resting flat on the table. I looked back at the notebook, at the budget I now understood line by line, at the passwords I had memorized, and I felt a quiet pride settle in. For years, I'd lived in a house that I helped build but didn't fully control. Now, everything that had once been hidden, accounts, decisions, plans, was mine to hold too. And I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I wasn't afraid of having power in my own life. I used to think staying out of the details meant I was being protected. Now I knew it was a way of being kept small. Not anymore. I felt that in my bones. The coffee machine beeped its little end tone, and I stood up slowly, stretching as I moved toward it. I poured myself a cup and held it in both hands, letting the heat seep into my skin. I walked over to the back door and leaned on the frame, watching Leon kneel to pull a few weeds. He didn't look up, and I didn't say anything. We didn't need to fill the space with words. The silence between us wasn't heavy now, it was calm. We were two people who had survived something ugly together, even if we hadn't handled it perfectly. I knew there were more conversations ahead, more healing to do, but I also knew I wasn't going to disappear inside it like I used to. I'd made myself too small for too long. That version of me didn't live here anymore. I took my coffee to the kitchen table and sat down again, this time for me, not to solve, not to plan, just to be. I pulled the notebook back toward me and added one more item to the bottom of the list. Rest. I underlined it, twice, because I'd earned it. Maybe healing didn't look like some big dramatic moment. Maybe it looked like this: morning light, a letter sealed with truth, and a quiet kitchen where nothing was on fire. I took a sip of coffee, let it sit on my tongue for a second before swallowing. It tasted stronger than usual, or maybe I just noticed it more now. That sip felt like a small kind of victory. My life wasn't fixed. My heart wasn't fully mended. But this moment? It was mine, peaceful, honest, entirely mine. I reached for the envelope, ran my thumb over the sealed flap one more time, then stood up to walk it to the mailbox. My steps were slow, but steady. No rush, no dread. Just the sound of birds outside and my feet on the hardwood floor. When I opened the front door, the sun hit my face, and I closed my eyes for just a second, letting it warm me. Then I walked to the mailbox and slipped the letter in. When it landed with a soft thunk, I felt it again. That shift. That quiet knowing that I had done something brave, even if it didn't look like much from the outside. I turned around, headed back to the house, and smiled just a little to myself. I wasn't in the basement anymore. I wasn't stuck. I wasn't silent. I was here, awake, reclaiming my life, one small, steady step at a time. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for staying with me through this story, and for holding space for my truth. If it touched you in any way, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the other real-life stories waiting for you here. I would truly love to know where you're listening from, so tell me your city or country in the comments, and let me feel how far my voice reached today. Your support means more to me than you know, and if this story resonated with you, there are many others on this channel that might speak to your heart too. With love and deep respect, thank you for being here with me.